Good morning, friends. I'm sorry I couldn't make the PLC this morning. I'm off to a conference today and Friday, but I did just want to touch base with you really quickly and show you a small lesson plan that I wrote that would take 2 days. I know that we're not teaching the same content-wise, but I hope that it would give you an idea maybe how better to use this template. 3 things that I used in my class that day is a Where I'm From poem that I wrote with the class. We used a graphic organizer so the students could record what they're seeing, hearing, tasting from reading the poem. And then finally, by the end of the day, they were going to use what we talked about to make their own Where I'm From poem. And so instead of just writing these 3 things down of what I wanted to get done, I turned to this template to help me structure it. So I'm going to scroll all the way back up to the top here and just talk from the top down. When I first start, I try to think of the essential questions, what we're getting out of the day's lesson. The activity or lesson hook, in this case, YouTube had a lyrical version, and so that was a great start to the day. First thing we did goes on your lesson hook. Sometimes teachers include this as the do now or the day's warm up or how it was a connection to yesterday. The next thing that's most important, and I realize I am scrolling down, probably have questions on the parts I'm skipping, very quickly, in the instructional plan, this is where you're doing your detailed explanation of the day. So for example, you can see, number 1, students are receiving a copy of the poem. 2, we're reading the poem, they're repeating it. And so here, now that we're getting into students interacting with their learning, this is where I start coding. And so you can see as I scroll down that the revised Bloom's taxonomy should increase throughout. So what I mean by that is here we're working on remembering, here we're understanding. By the end of the day, hopefully we're working on some analysis, higher level thinking, and eventually they're going to be creating their own poem, which would be RBT 6. I do have a closing or summarizing strategy as what they need to be able to do at the end of today is to brainstorm a list of what we read throughout the unit, which is just them thinking, RBT 1, and then engaging in a silent class discussion, celebrating our similarities and differences, because that's evaluating, it's RBT 5. And one of the things I found as a class discussion when I Googled was this interesting thing called a gallery walk. And so I just added the description down here. Going back up to the top of this template, you can see the resources, what we need for the day. As a teacher, I need a projector, a document camera, and a whiteboard. As a student, they're going to need copies of the handouts and just paper and a pencil. There are some words that we're going to go over this unit. So here are the word study. And again, this is just a hyperlink to a vocabulary strategy website that I found. And so I just wanted to put that for me so I knew where to get that information. Under learning experiences, the Common Core or Essential Standards, this was given to me in my pacing guide. And so I literally just copy and pasted whatever the pacing guide said in, and these were the objectives that I was going over for the day. So I understand that this looks overwhelming, but this was just what I was required to cover in this small unit. In interdisciplinary opportunities, a lot of you are doing that in terms of incorporating math, science, writing, so anything that you feel like fits in there. The I can statements are pretty much these cite textual evidence to support analysis of what the text says explicitly as well as inferences drawn from the text. So instead of showing that on my whiteboard, I might tell the students that today you should be able to analyze poetry, understand the point of view of others. So for example, Miss Jones might say, I can tell the difference between quick dry bread ingredients. And I hope I'm getting that right. On the side columns, the balanced literacy components. Are you reading? Are you writing? Word study, I like to explain as like Latin root word derivatives or prefix, suffix, breaking down words. Speaking and listening is a lot of the group work we see with kids talking back and forth to each other. This may be the most important, and for lateral entry teachers, I think this is the hardest to remember. Always hitting the gradual release of responsibility, which essentially is a 5-step lesson plan. Teacher's doing it first, teacher and student are doing it together, we're doing it as a group, and then eventually students do the work independently to see if they understand it. Learning and innovation skills. Are we using creativity and innovation, creativity, thinking, and problem solving, communication, and collaboration? You can see that I've highlighted these using this feature on the computer, which is this yellow highlight toggle. And so in my mind, this means that I thought I did these things. I've seen other teachers leave this blank when they print it out the first time and then just X the boxes. Whatever works for you is fine. The 8 mathematical principles. I'll find additional information. In the meantime, some of the things that I feel like we use on a regular basis is probably make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. Using appropriate tools strategically. And usually look for and make use of structure. In this case, I'm talking about poetry structure, whereas you may be talking about measurement structure or structure of the body, depending on the CTE course that you're teaching. The other last little bit that I did want to talk about today, and I know that I'm probably overwhelming you already, is the differentiation strategies. For this lesson specifically, I thought, okay, if a student was done early, what would show me that they can extend their lesson? And that would be them using multimedia tools. And you can see that I've included the hyperlinks so the kids can just go there. And I don't really have to explain it to them. I could just have this printed out and say, here, go forth and conquer. Intervention, again, this is something that I Googled. For example, in this, I Googled reading comprehension. And language development, I usually try to stick to online things. Online flashcards, dictionary.com, peer tutoring. However we can get students to be exposed to language while in your classroom. Another thing that I'm going to include for you just as a tool is what I used when I was making lesson plans for the district. And that is this rubric. This was given, like I said, by the district to see if lesson plans were exemplary, satisfactory, or unsatisfactory. What I think may be beneficial is that if we spent some time looking in the satisfactory column, and so that way you can kind of mentally check off if you included these things. So for example, the instructional plan really helped me to look because this is telling me this is what the district is looking for. 2 research-based instructional strategies. And so for example, I spent time Googling some of these things that I had not heard of before, like the gallery walk or creating a raft, the difference between group problem solving and experimentation, for example. And so I hope between this tool and this quick video, you guys will be set up for the day. The last thing is assessment, and it tells you the 1, 2, 3 things they're looking for here. You can see here informal quizzes, rubrics, student response strategies. Mine were pretty much the same. If you'll excuse me. Pre-assessment was either a Classgate pre-assessment, maybe in CTE you could say elements pre-assessment. Could be simple as a KWL chart. Formative assessments, I see CTE doing a great job of circulating the classroom. And so that might be something that you include in your lesson plans as well, that you're going to rotate and circulate the classroom, looking for students that are having trouble. Post-assessment, I did a lot of writing to explain, and so for example at the end of this lesson, kids may be asked to write to explain this quote using a variety of texts we read that day. Teacher reflection would just be notes for me to say, wow, this went really well, or next time I teach this I'm definitely going to take it out. Obviously we're going to revisit this tool again and again, and I hope that this was a little bit helpful. I do look forward to any questions, feedback, or anything like that. And thanks for listening to me for as long as you did. I miss you all, and I'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Bye.